Okay, so in many games, or at least in the or at least in the combat-centric games that are out there, the real-time combat-centric games, you have buy menus where you can buy new things before an active, like a physically active game session starts, or during the game or something. Um, in each of those circumstances, you don't necessarily have time to think and stuff because there might be another match happening or something like that, that's about to come up. You might get pulled in there, but certain players are going to be able to see it all happening at once, and certain players aren't for different reasons. It's going to be and so what you have to know here is that you know if if you can afford to buy to any extent and stuff, you you should definitely go to the buy menu. If you don't need to, then you're going to be spending time and energy to go buy and stuff. And maybe that's not the best thing. That's not necessarily the best way to address it and stuff because in games like this, you're going to have to address things in action. It actually has that similarity with doing things in real life around other people and stuff. Sometimes when somebody says something, you're going to have to force the issue, which is the unfortunate truth. But hey, it is what it is. Person has to strike a balance between um, making sure things go right when things are about to go wrong, you know, and not letting things go wrong. And uh, this situation has that commonality. So going back to the buy menu, in less contextual language, um, you are. Is this recording? Yeah, it's recording. Okay. Um, Certain things you buy just naturally don't make sense and stuff. They're a replaceable expense. Like for example, um, there's like, but there's definitely a general pattern and stuff. You wanna because you want to buy, and this is what I know from not just experience, but just from just doing a lot of proper thinking in there and stuff. Um, you want to uh, you want to buy into the things that um, because it's combat centric, you want to buy into things that are protective, offensive, and stuff. If you're buying into something that's purely offensive and that can actually just uh, that can actually that's going to kill you or kill a teammate or has some crazy ridiculous cost to it and stuff, either with points or with time, and points can be credits or whatever, then you definitely don't want to do that. You might end up um, you might end up really screwing yourself over. Um, and unfortunately, unfortunately for the people that think everything is about the other person or the other people, whatever, it's not. You do have to self carry. You do have to self carry because you are going to when it comes when your life or your circumstances shared with other people and stuff. What affects you affects other people too and stuff. So and I recently ran into a player today who was calling me selfish because I had to do a tactical retreat to pick up materials and stuff. Um, Materials that I knew were going to be spent, you know, sooner or later the on the mission. Um, I was called selfish by that player, and they just, but that person didn't get it. They really didn't get it and stuff. Um, anyway, let's go to another buy menu. This is a vastly different buy menu, right? It is, but it's not, and stuff. Essentially the same thing. You're going to have to buy into su- supporting offensive or protective offensives. If you can't do that, you buy into developments and stuff, or you buy into disruptions. Um, you can, as a last resort, um, and the least priority, generally speaking, you buy into health. You buy into things like just health. Giving yourself extra chances because sometimes you're an insufficient material. So when you're when you're insufficient material, you basically do everything I just said. But when you're already an insufficient material and stuff, or unfortunately, and it happens, insufficient personnel, um, then you're going to have to buy yourself more chances, more health, because unfortunately, because you have to be selectively responsive, but still be very fast and very knowledgeable about everything going on. You're gonna need at least a minimum amount of idle time to process everything that's going on, and um, and of course idle time is outside of the session when things are happening and going and stuff. You want to make sure you have use that precious space and time to think as completely as sharply as possible. So if somebody's telling you you're thinking too much and stuff, they're most likely wrong. And it kind of goes back to the principle: you shouldn't follow what people say. Most of what people say is absolute garbage. And I mean that's pretty much all areas in real life and not. So I mean we can go to some more buy menus. Now here with this buy menu and stuff, I really wouldn't take this language out of context here and stuff. This this type of a game is a bit too serious when it comes to when it comes to the combat aspect and stuff. Because in this game, when you die, you're dead. And that's very, it's basically like a training for Desperado and stuff. Because dying is basically a guarantee, which just creates a really dismal, depressing game. But it's funny because you really should focus through it and stuff. Like when games are very tough and sensitive, like CS:GO, or maybe even Sekiro, like I'm kind of referencing here. You want, like, if you're focused on everything leading, like the fighting aspect, like improving your position in the game and dominating and stuff, then you're gonna do great and stuff. And if losing is a guarantee for some reason, either maybe you're doing some trial reps or something, like I mentioned in another video, then you're focused on the right thing. You're obviously you're not performing so well there and stuff, but maybe later on you're going to be 10, 50 times better. It's just important not to be all emotional about it, or God forbid get into some chemical dependency and stuff, because yeah, because things like that, they really make a person dumb. They really do. And yeah, here's another buy menu here. What can we say? Like, with some games, you're just going to have to read about them first. And if you don't, then you're going to end up grabbing at air, because it makes the game much smaller in your head, except the game is actually very big and elaborate. So with any game, it helps to learn about it. And yeah, I mean, so if you're happy to nerd out and and be a nerd and read and stuff, then yeah, it's good. If you're a regular reader, that's good. But you have to be a regular imaginer and stuff, and think about selectively responding in the activity and solving the problems that might come up and stuff, and creating some sense of a system and stuff. Because to enjoy it, you're going to have to be good at it to some extent and stuff. And then applying that idea, if you end up losing, you might end up losing at the wrong time, and then you just find yourself, feeling kind of bummed out because the game the game, really went against you and stuff. The situation went against you and you died. So, or you lost or whatever, and it just left you with, what's basically the opposite of a reward, which is, kind of the liability of a person who gets into this type of a pastime, right? Like when they're not being rewarded, it just feels like they're like you're being filled with poison, you know, um, which is, I think, why a lot of people in faith groups and in some health groups and stuff get very concerned about these games and stuff, because these games are very triggering some of some neurotic states. They really are, and um, they they definitely give you a lot of reward, but for very little work and stuff, under the guise of being fun or being nice and stuff. You, and you have to think about, like, what are the alternatives? Why is it that some people can just sweat it out and grind and feel like shit and stuff every day, and be knocked off the rails completely, but then and then pick up the pieces and stuff, and then uh, just just win afterwards in the long game? It's because they don't do stuff like these games, too much and stuff. If or they're not burning themselves out on these on stuff like games. It's all process addiction anyway, you know. So yeah, I mean, so this is one of the ways how these games actually shrink your psyche and stuff. That that operating loop of your brain just gets smaller and stuff, because you're being overcompensated for not really thinking too sharp, not doing too well in comparison to what a person could do. Um, this is just how the brain gets trained, So I, yeah, so I mean, we kind of went on a tangent there, but it's an important lesson. And I mean, what else can I say? I mean, maybe we can go back to the buy menus some. I mean, you still have to think about what's cost effective in these buy menus and stuff, and you have to think about your earnings tier and your rate of improvement. If you can't relate those and stuff, you know, there's some important math you're ignoring. And I'll throw you a few bones. When it comes to the benefits in these games, it's not always about arithmetics and adding across, subtracting across. It's about cross products and it's called cross quotients. And the cross product, your brain should be selectively applying the equation to um, as informed of circumstances as possible. Not necessarily a specific scenario, but maybe a group of scenarios and stuff, or some kind of important abstraction, some important visual abstraction and stuff, to give some grounds to your thinking, so your brain's not just analyzing on smoke that it can't see through, so to speak. Um, so yeah, insight, intuition, that the type of intuition where you're like visualizing things, dose calculation and stuff. That stuff is valuable. Dose calculation here meaning just like kind of thinking in your head, visualizing possibilities. You have some creative element because you're trying to come up with the right combination of ideas and stuff. And that's actually good for you, good for your brain. You learn to think under pressure when things get difficult and stuff. It's good for you and stuff, and it works for you to do that. Um, so hugging the topic of buy menus tighter and stuff. You uh, you can often they come with upgrade trees. You can look down the upgrade trees and see what the general direction is you want to go. You say like, okay, for a while I'll accept this compromise because later on I'm going to do better, 20 times better and stuff. Like it's just the position's just so much more winning. It's so much more of a dominant position and stuff. Um, yeah, and however, like if you're like in a PvP mindset and stuff, it's really going to be all about the position as related to you, as is related to your numbers and the situations that you end up in and stuff. And Um, but you know, don't don't be afraid to trick the other players on the map. Um, and honestly, in a lot of team games, teammates will often be in the way of each other. They'll walk into your firing line or whatever. They'll do something to mess you up, and um, that has to be dealt with and stuff. Like you don't necessarily have to. I really heavily implore against attacking them and stuff. Though sometimes it can't be helped. Sometimes like they just make you so mad because they're really crapping on your good day and stuff. And um, so they so you have to think of ways to practically address that. Maybe if you weren't on that side of the map, it wouldn't happen. That type of stuff. Um, And if the grammar bothers you and stuff, you're probably focusing on the wrong things. You probably want to focus more on the essential matter of reference. That's usually where people learn and understand things. You don't actually learn and understand things from learning how, what words are used and the specific details of the grammar because the person's hanging up on the letter, stopping at the language so much and stuff. You want to focus on the direction of reference and stuff, whether it's contextual statement or it's talking about something in specific. Um, I think I've been clear enough, honestly, and um, what else can be said? Let's see how much time I've spent. Yeah, about almost 17 minutes. I think I've said more than enough.